What is up, MMA community? I just want to let you guys know that this podcast may have some graphic language that may not be suitable for all audiences. The listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the 10th episode of the BP and Mean Gene MMA show. I'm BP, and as always, joining me today, Mean Gene.
What's up, guys?
It's already lagging. As some of you can see if you're watching us on our newly created YouTube channel, we are now also offering video of our beautiful faces here. So right now we're just going to do a recap of UFC Fight Night Poirier versus Hooker. Not a super amount to talk about today. We'll just kind of go over that card, and then our next episode, we might be in Vegas. If not, we're just going to be doing a preview episode in the following episode. Either way, next week, me and Gene and I will be out in Vegas watching the UFC 251 together.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no event we can go to. That was the plan.
Yeah, that was the original plan. Yep.
In person, but damn COVID.
So we can just start off. Did you want to just go fight? But we'll go fight by fight. Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. A lot are saying fight of the year. I definitely think it's top two. I would personally say very biasly, I think with some recency bias in my head. I definitely think it is fight of the year, but I can see someone saying Joanna versus Zhang Weili would also be up there. What do you think, Chief?
I still think the Joanna and Zhang Weili fight is a fight of the year. Main reason why 5-round fight, closely contested, and it literally went down to it. You know, all 5 rounds were action packed,
Mm-hmm.
and split decision in the scorecards could have gone either way. And on this fight with Poirier versus Dan Hooker, action packed second round, I think you would agree is the round of the year to this
Definitely.
point. But the 4th and 5th round, towards the end of the 4th round, and then definitely the 5th round slowed down, a lot more grappling, and you knew that Poirier won.
Yeah.
I just think that, and here's the other thing with that Zhang Weili and Joanna Jacek fight. It was a title fight as well. I think that has
That's true.
That should give it a little push, a little bump over the Poirier Hooker fight. But for all those reasons, that's one of the reasons. For all those other reasons I stated, that's why I'd put Zhang Weili and the Joanna Jacek title fight as number one. So far, we got a lot of good fights still booked, and I can only imagine what else the UFC is going to book for the rest of the year. So,
yeah, especially with all the bookings coming up.
Yeah, we'll see if that holds on. So,
yeah, I definitely. I mean, I can't argue that. I definitely think you make a valid point with it being a title fight. You make a valid point with it being a split decision and being pretty much no grappling at all. So, yeah, that's a good point. And the split decision is another valid point. So can't argue with you. I would like I was saying before we recorded, I would have to rewatch both to really decide without any bias in my mind what was more exciting to me. It's obviously very subjective. But other than that, not much to say. Like you said, I think Dustin Poirier did clearly win. The first and second round, I can see someone giving to Hooker. I actually gave Poirier the first round, but I can totally see, and I was starting to lean towards giving Hooker the first round after I saw a bunch of other people saying that, Hooker won the first two. But I think the third round, fourth round, and fifth round were clearly Poirier, and the right man won, and which is another kind of trend here. Since they've been back in Vegas, I feel like there's been some egregious scorecards, but there hasn't been an egregious decision yet, in my opinion. Besides maybe Shane Burgos and Josh Emmett, but again, a very closely contested fight, and I wouldn't call it egregious. Maybe I think the wrong man won, but other than that, I can't really say that there's been anything egregious. Which I I'm happy for them to be back in Vegas, and for that reason exactly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Jacksonville was rough for a lot of those decisions.
Yeah,
They were brutal. And even though there's a lot of negative things to say about Vegas when it comes to judging, they still are one of the better commissions out
definitely.
there. When it comes to judging, they're not perfect. Like, no one is perfect when it comes to judging, but just happy they moved from, obviously Florida, there was issues. Texas, we've seen issues this
Yes.
year. So it's just a nice welcome to be back in Vegas and have some, better scoring, better judging, I should say. So,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
but yeah, Poirier clearly won that fight. I had it 3-4-5 as well. Again, the first round was up in the air. I could have given it to Poirier as well. The third round was just interesting when Hooker took him down again.
Mhm.
Um, I was getting, I was pushing, I bet on Poirier. I wanted Poirier to win. I was getting a little nervous there in the third round when Hooker was on top. But what I got worried about was, Hooker was on top for however, I don't know how long he was, maybe a minute or two.
Mhm.
Dustin was doing the damage from the bottom.
Yes, he was the
And,
aggressor.
and I was just hoping that the judges would see that. And I feel like that's a perfect situation where, Texas or Florida, early, May or whenever they were down there, that those judges probably would have given it to Hooker. They
Mhm.
would have put him on top in the top position and took Poirier down, had the control on the ground, and wouldn't have recognized the damage that Poirier was throwing from the bottom because he was throwing some nasty elbows and it's pretty clear to
And
most
putting up submission attempts.
and submission attempts. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like even him going to the ground was him attempting to lock in the choke. Um,
Yes. And that
that
and I wanna throw that in there too.
Mhm.
Sorry to cut you off. The, uh, the guillotines, it was almost frustrating because I was nervous about the decision, that was upcoming, if it was gonna go to decision. I felt like Poirier kept pulling guard to lock in that guillotine, and I felt like, man, he was very close multiple times, but it almost felt to me that he was trying to prove a point from the Khabib fight, like you said, it'll always haunt him that he didn't put himself into full guard and instead stuck in half guard um, when he had that guillotine on Khabib. And I felt like he was trying to prove a point to himself. I don't even think it was a point to be proven to anyone else. I think it was a point he was trying to prove to himself that he can finish a fight even after being battered and damaged. Um, in the guillotine position, which he does have a phenomenal guillotine. But I almost felt like I was worried about those judges, and I was worried that him pulling guard and not, getting back on top or whatever, remaining in a controlling position in the judge's eyes would ultimately hurt him. But I'm glad, like you said, the judges did come out and give the correct scoring.
yeah, and those guillotines, according to his coach, he always locks those up in training. He likes doing that. His coach Mike Brown is against it. He said it's been a battle between him and Poirier. He hates when he does that. When he tries to pull guard. And he pulls it off. He's able to choke his partners out, but in a fight, it really bothers Mike Brown. And you saw it too. I mean,
Yeah.
it was I was in the same position as you. I was worrying because you never know with MMA judges and with some of these crazy decisions we've seen. I thought by him trying to lock in submission, then ultimately losing it, and then Hooker being on top and being on top for a minute or two. Can't remember how long. I know it was more than a minute, especially
Hmm.
in that third round. I thought that they'd end up giving Hooker that round and not acknowledging the damage that Poirier was doing from guard. So
Definitely.
yeah, go
And
ahead.
yeah, last thing about that, the other thing too that was frustrating me about it is that they were so bloody and sweaty. So like, I mean, to lock in a guillotine, not only when you're sweaty, but the blood is running down your face. I mean, you have to have a fucking godly grip to lock that in. And if they weren't sweaty, if he had pulled guard in that third round, or like he did in that third round in the first round, he finishes that guillotine. He had it completely locked in. Hooker was just sweaty enough and obviously wet enough to get out of that.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that. So
Yeah. So
what do you think is next, or what would you like to see for? Let's start with Poirier. We'll talk about both of them, but Poirier first.
yeah, I think there's only two fights for Poirier. Either they give him Conor McGregor. I'd love to see that rematch, or you can give him. You can. I can see them doing. Uh, Honestly, no. I'm going to stick with my only two fights. They'll either give him Conor McGregor that rematch, which I'd love to see. I don't think they're going to. I think that he's going to fight Tony Ferguson. I think, like I mentioned to you earlier last week, he needs to fight Tony Ferguson on that September card if they can do that. And no matter what the UFC wins, um, if Khabib wins, then you have obviously and Dustin Poirier wins, then Khabib's not going to fight Dustin again. It's better for the UFC. They might be able to sell it to Khabib and throw in Conor. That's the least likely outcome of all of that, I think,
Mhm.
or that's the most likely outcome. But that's the I guess the least helpful outcome to the UFC or whatever.
Right.
Um, Ultimately, I'll just run through really quickly. Dustin Poirier wins. Justin Gaethje wins. Easy sell. That's a blockbuster and a rematch. Um, Justin Gaethje wins. Tony Ferguson wins. Justin Gaethje fights Connor. Um, Tony Ferguson wins. Khabib wins. I don't need
Yeah.
to say anything else. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I like. I agree with you 100% on all those matchups. I'm going to go from a different perspective, though. I think you put him on that card, obviously, just with COVID, everything that's going on. Because I just heard. I don't know what the status of the fight is, but I believe that Gilbert Burns, someone in his corner, tested positive for COVID.
oh fuck.
Yeah, I know. So I haven't heard that the fight's off or anything like that, but at the same time, there is potential for that fight to be off because of his
Yeah.
corner testing for COVID. So now, fast forward to September, and what we're talking about right here with Poirier's potential next fight. If you do put Poirier versus, so let me agree. I agree with you. Either Conor or it's Tony Ferguson. I can't see anyone else from
Hmm.
Poirier now. Even if Ferguson off a loss is a legit, fight for Poirier, considering Tony Ferguson's win streak. So you match them up, put them in September. That way, if anyone falls out of that title fight, that then you split up Poirier, Ferguson, and they go into the title fight against Gaethje or against Khabib if anyone tests positive. And
Hmm.
then after that, like you said, um, it's good for the matchup in the sense of whoever wins. It gives Conor an easier path towards Khabib because you're not going to redo that Poirier versus Khabib fight. I doubt it. Or at the very least, Poirier is going to have to get through Conor. That's why I would like to see that fight first. I'd like to see instead of I don't know I'm torn on it. Ferguson Poirier is a hell of a fight. Ferguson, I'd like to see him get back in there
Me
because
too.
I feel like the situation that he was put into, he was training since November of 2019 for Khabib, a wrestler, and then last
Yeah.
minute he change and gets Justin Gaethje and ends up losing. I felt bad for him, but so I'd like to just I feel like he's still number one contender, but right there with Poirier. So
Yeah.
give him fight, but from the UFC's perspective, the better fight to do is Poirier versus Conor McGregor.
I would love that, but I don't think the UFC does that.
I don't think the UFC does it, and I don't. And again, it's kind of going to be, and Conor 100% is not going to be the co-main event to Khabib.
No.
His ego is not going to allow that to happen. So
No.
um,
That
I
would
just
be like an October card.
yeah, I just think right now it's lining up to be Ferguson versus Poirier, and that would be
I
one hell
agree.
of a fight. And um, I'm rooting for I'm rooting for Ferguson because obviously we all want to see Khabib versus Ferguson, and I think if
Yeah.
Ferguson beats Poirier, I think he does get Khabib. And here's man, this since we don't have a lot to talk about, let's just let me jump into this
Yeah,
because
I have a lot to go ahead.
I've been itching to talk about this. Um, Khabib earlier said that he has an announcement that he's going to make after his fight in September. I don't know what that announcement is going to be, but one thing I wonder is what happens if he comes out and says, "Listen, I want to fight Tony Ferguson before I retire. It's a must." Same thing, kind of a touch of that Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero situation, where it's like, "Hey, I have to fight this guy. This guy, many consider to be the most dangerous person in this weight division. So I need to fight you all, regardless of the rankings or his win streak." I feel like Khabib could potentially do the same thing with Tony. They've tried to
Hmm.
book it 5 times. He said numerous times. He actually even recently he said, "I need to fight Tony Ferguson for my
Like I
legacy,"
said, yeah,
and this is the perfect situation and perfect time to do that. You knock off Gaethje if he does knock off Gaethje, and then you fight Tony Ferguson, and then you've essentially knocked off 3 of the top 5 guys in your division.
4. Yeah,
Four with Connor, Gaethje,
Tony and Dustin.
Poirier, and, yeah, then yeah, you'd be going after fourth with Tony. Um, and I could see him doing that. A lot of people, I haven't heard this from anyone. I don't think you're going to hear anyone really talk about it. This is straight from me and Gene. But
Mhm.
I I was just thinking about it randomly about what could he announce, and I just started thinking like, man, what if this guy, like I said, what if this guy just comes out and just says, "Hey, I only have 1 or 2 fights left. I'm going to fight Gaethje." I don't know if he's going to make this announcement at before the fight or after. I'm assuming he's going to do it after. I think he said he'll do it after. So he beats Gaethje and just says, "Listen, I want Tony next. I don't care if he's coming off a loss. I don't know what, I don't care whatever the situation is. He's next." What's the UFC going to do? They're not going to strip him of the title. Um, and Connor's
Mhm.
gonna be screwed, man. At the end of the day, if Connor would just fought Gaethje in January, I think we'd be in a totally different situation now. Or if he would have fought, you know, Gaethje or pardon me, Tony for the interim in April, I think we'd be in a different situation. But
Definitely.
yeah, so that's my
Yeah,
big
no,
that's my big thing that I feel pretty good about kind of concocting in my head. Is that what if Khabib just comes out and says, "Hey, I want to fight Tony, and I have to fight Tony for my legacy. I refuse to fight anyone else." So
yeah,
yeah,
just one more fight and I'm done type of thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's how it'll be worded is, I have one more fight, no man. I like that idea a lot. I I mean, definitely might be. I don't think he's gonna retire like everyone's saying, but it might be something like that where I am retiring, but I need to fight Ferguson first. So, if it's not Ferguson, I'm not fighting. And yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility. Either way, um, well, I guess that would change then if Ferguson loses on that card. Do you think? Do you think that announcement changes?
um,
Or do you think he just retires then?
yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Unless it does change it for sure. Then you got Ferguson coming off of 2 losses.
Mhm.
I feel like the UFC is. I feel like the UFC. If Tony wins, I feel like the UFC would give Khabib Tony. But
Yeah.
if Tony's coming off a loss to Gaethje and now Poirier, the UFC's gonna be like, "Listen, dude, we're not giving you Gaethje. Like, we're not doing it." The UL thing was different with Adesanya because you didn't have the contenders in that division, so they needed UL to come in there to step in. Plus,
What
also,
about Dan Henderson, Michael Bisping?
yeah, that's another one too. Yeah, yeah, no, you're right. That's another one too. Yeah, Bisbing pretty much called, said I have to fight. I got to fight Bisbing. Pardon me. um, Bisbing said I have to fight Dan Henderson. Pardon me.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so that's another example of that too. So the only thing I'll just say, like I said, coming off of 2 losses, I think it's gonna be hard for Khabib to get that fight. But we'll see. You never know. I mean, if he
Yeah.
threatens true retirement, does the UFC buckle? Maybe they do. I personally don't think they will. I think they're just gonna say, "Listen, man, we're just gonna set up a interim title fight between Connor and whoever else. If you want to retire, you're gonna retire." But um, if Tony wins, then I think that happens. I think the UFC gives it to him and then says, like, "Hey, maybe his last fight is a rematch versus Connor."
Yeah. So I want to go back to another thing you had said right before we were talking about this and about rooting for Ferguson. And I'm a little bit torn on that fight. I think retroactively, I will have voted for Dustin Poirier if Gaethje wins. If Khabib wins, I will retroactively have voted for Tony Ferguson. So when that fight comes on, whoever wins, I'm fucking super pumped for. But I guess to really get into it, say this does happen, because we're almost talking like it is going to happen. We have the inside scoop or something. But say it does happen.
Mm.
Um, I feel like the best combination, I think you would agree, is if Khabib and Ferguson win, or Justin and Dustin Poirier win. Just because that's awesome for Dustin Poirier, or for Justin. He's able to, and for Dustin Poirier as well. If he wins, he now gets that um, rematch against Dustin Poirier when he was more of a wild fighter, and he didn't make these improvements with his striking, and we see a better Dustin Poirier as well. And so I think that would be a phenomenal, that would be a blockbuster fight, as well as obviously Tony and Khabib would be. So either way, I think the fans win in this, and I think no matter what, these two fights, if they do happen, set up a, no matter what the end result is, set up a blockbuster with
Mhm.
Connor being that fifth man out.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting. It's crazy to say that. You know, Connor, what coming into this year, you thought he still had the pull. You know, he's going to call a shot. He's going to get what he wants, and it just doesn't seem like that. He doesn't have that pull anymore, man. It's amazing to see his the downfall of Connor's
Power.
yeah power. There you go. I was going to say stardom in the UFC, but it's not stardom. Yeah, power. That's the right word.
Hmm.
Um, whereas he was calling the shots. Dana White was just hanging from his nuts, and he was, but yeah, now Connor he doesn't have that same pull. He came out. It looked like he was going to have that in January, knocking off Cerrone. I want to fight 3 times,
Yeah.
but COVID kind of screwed that up, and he kind of screwed it up too, man. I mean, we had this conversation before. He had the opportunity to take that short fight notice, or yeah, short fight
Short
notice
notice fight.
against short notice fight, against against Tony, and he declined. I mean, and that's the thing Dana always says. When you get the opportunity, you gotta take it. And um, Conor doesn't have to take it. He's got the money, he's got the fame, he's got the start, all that stuff. But
Hmm.
if he's really trying to do this season, and he's really trying to get back to a title fight, and he's serious about being a fighter now, quote unquote, um, he's got to fight. He has to fight when those opportunities present themselves, and we've seen a couple times with Gaethje. I know he broke his hand at the time, but he had Gaethje broke his hand, and then 2020 he was Gaethje or Cerrone. He takes Cerrone the easy. See, that's what I'm saying. He takes the easy fight in Cerrone. If he would have just taken Justin Gaethje, he has a legit win at 155.
Hmm.
One of the top 10, 155ers.
Assuming he wins that fight, yeah.
He wins that fight, then you're like, he's right there in the mix. But right now, the thing that's crazy is now these guys are passing them by. Even in a loss, Ferguson still kind of is above Connor, um, especially when it comes to a matchup with
He
Khabib.
definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah, and then now Poirier now has jumped above Connor as well after this crazy ass win, and then obviously naturally Gaethje's above him because he's got the interim title. So he's fifth man on the totem pole right now, and fourth man when it comes to contenders. So it's crazy to see that power, his power just not being what it was at one point, or his pull,
Yeah,
not
I
being
agree.
what it was at one point. But whatever, man, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Get out there
Yeah,
and
and I think we touched on this last podcast, like, or two podcasts ago. I can't remember for sure, but having I think a lot of it is Connor falling victim to his own narratives. So he creates these narratives, like when he broke his hand, he didn't want to go out and say I broke my hand. So he said, "I'll never co-main event. I'm not a co-main event guy." So now it hurts him now when his only position possible is to be a co-main event, especially with COVID. There's no way they're not headlining two pay-per-views this year when we lost a pay-per-view, or at least a month for pay-per-view. There's no way they're going to have two non-title fight headliners. It doesn't make sense for the UFC, especially with how everything's booking. Um, so Connor's narrative hurt him there. He can't go back on that and say, "Oh, I was just saying that because they broke my hand." 'Cause you can't do that. Connor's a professional talker, and he knows that that rule doesn't work. He can't go back on that word. And the other thing is him setting up this. I'm not a replacement fighter. He had mentioned that he would replace Tony Ferguson or Khabib, whoever was cut out on that fight. So instead of saying, "Hey, I can't make weight right now," because I mean he's probably pushing 180 right now, walking around that. Instead of saying, "Hey, there's no way I'm getting down to 155," he has to go, "Oh, I'm not a replacement fighter," because that's better for his character.
Hmm.
That's better for his character. But now he's a victim to that narrative. So now he lost that opportunity. And now in the future, if someone pulls out, he's not going to replace them because the UFC is going to be like, "Wait, I thought you weren't a replacement fighter."
Yeah.
So he's falling victim to his own narratives, and I think we're seeing that a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's kind of backed himself into a corner with all
Hmm.
of this stuff, and he's damned if he do, damned if he do, damned if he doesn't. Um, damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. I'm always messing up my words. But
Make like a tree and get out of here.
I think the main thing that's killing him out of all those things that you laid out, I think the thing that's killing him is that he will not fight outside the main event slot. I think
Yeah,
it'd be easy. I feel like he'd have a ton of fights, um, and can hop on a lot of cards if he would just succumb to the co-main event label.
and I
Um,
don't think just to cut you off, I don't think that's a thing. Like I truly believe that he created that narrative to for a different reason because whether it's because he broke his hand and didn't want to say that or because of the he didn't want to fight Justin Gaethje in general. I think he created that narrative to cover up the true narrative or whatever it was. I don't think it's that he because when it comes down to it, he makes enough. I mean, he makes the same amount of money whether he's co-main event or main event because he in his contract he gets pay-per-view points.
mhm,
And you know damn well everyone's going to buy that pay-per-view whether he's the second name on that poster or he's the first name. It doesn't matter.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think he can't go back on that narrative, and it is hurting him now.
Or his pride's not letting him go back. He can definitely go back on it. And I think if he wants to do this,
Yeah.
I think if he wants to do this season and he's serious about being a fighter in his
Yep.
eyes, and get back to what he was before the whole Mayweather fight. I think that this is what he needs to do. Is just you're gonna have to be a co-main event at this point, buddy, because you're not. Unfortunately, that Cerrone win didn't put you in didn't put you in a title picture. Like don't get me wrong, everyone's gonna watch Conor fight. If he ends up fighting Khabib, it's
Yeah.
still be one of the biggest fights ever um, in combat history and in MMA history.
Hmm.
Um, but right now, a large segment of the population, a large segment of the fans, don't respect him getting a title shot, and I think even the UFC to a degree realizes that. Especially, I just said I'm repeating myself, but after the performance that Gaethje had against Tony Ferguson, obviously he jumps above Conor. Naturally, he's got the interim title as well, so
Hmm.
that's obvious. That goes without saying. And then Poirier after this a fight with Hooker, jumps Connor, and then Tony is kind of right there. Tony's like even with Connor in my eyes in the sense of contender for the title, and that's what happens when you don't fight, and that's what happens when you fight Donald Cerrone at 170. You just get passed over. If he would have just fought Gaethje, man, at 155 in January, he would have been fine through all of this. He could have been sitting out this whole time, and he would have still been probably cemented at number one.
Hmm.
Um, even after a win like this with Poirier, because then you could argue, Poirier already fought for the title and all that jazz. So, um, yeah, I mean, whatever, man. I have no sympathy. I like him as a fighter. I know I've been, kind of pushing back against a lot of his antics recently, but he's done this to himself, and whatever. We'll see what happens with him. We'll see if he gets back out there sooner than later. He's got a shit ton of fights. He can fight Poirier. He can fight Ferguson if he wants. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
lot out there that he can fight, but he's not going to do it. I legit don't think he's going to do it. I legit think the UFC is not going to do it. So
yeah,
I
I
think,
think that's the issue.
well, that's the issue. And then, man, I'm telling you, if Khabib comes out in September and gets that win or whatever, it gets leaked before he even fights Justin Gaethje, and he says, like, because Ali Abdelaziz, he'll probably spill the beans. And if it is what I think it potentially could be, and saying like I'm going to retire in 1 or 2 fights, and I want to fight Tony Ferguson next. I mean, I think
That's
Connor's
it.
fucked at that point for
Hmm.
getting the title, and then he's gonna have. Well, then what are you gonna do? You're gonna go for the 170 strap? You're gonna. I mean, what are you gonna do at that point? But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think just to kind of cap it off, because I do want to move on from this Connor thing,
Yes, yes, yes.
um, is I think you brought it up a little bit. I think really what it comes down to is the UFC having a misstep. I think the UFC is really, and I understand why, because of his stardom and because of the pull that he has with the fan base or the casual fan. Um, the UFC is really like picking and choosing. Hey Connor, just shut up. Don't just sit in the locker room. We'll pull you out when we'll make a lot of money. And I think Connor, in a lot of ways, it's doing the same thing, but he's also just like, I just want to fight. Um, but he understands business wise, oh, it's not smart for me to go up there against this top contender because why risk that Khabib fight? So he's kind of in the middle. He's frustrated. The UFC is just like shut up until the Khabib fight happens, or shut up until a bigger fight happens. And I think that's where the issues are coming. And I also think ultimately what it comes down to is UFC saying no Connor until fans, and that's frustrating as well. Because
Yeah,
otherwise, I would argue back against myself and say, well, if it was really just the UFC, why wouldn't they throw him against Nate? And I think that's because of COVID. So I think the UFC is just like, Connor, you're not fighting until we can get fans, because otherwise we can't really cover your sticker price.
yeah. I agree with that. So,
Yeah.
so
So moving on, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, moving on. Let's move on to Hooker real quick. Who'd you like him to fight? And we can make this quick. We don't have to get into he's the loser, in that matchup with Poirier. So let's just kind of run
Yeah.
through it. I can jump in first if you want.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, I was just gonna say, I know he's talking about Tony Ferguson. I don't agree with that. I also wanted to mention earlier when we are talking about Tony Ferguson, some people are saying, "Oh, give Tony Ferguson, a lighter guy, and then let him work his way back up." No, dude, he lost one fight in the past 11. I mean, the idea that he needs a step back is like, no, dude, he was training for the best wrestler we've ever seen, arguably in the UFC, and then he goes up against a great wrestler who never uses it, just a striker ultimately. So it's kind of a crazy ask, and only Tony Ferguson would do it so willingly, but it hurt him. So to this idea that he needs to go back down and fight the Wolves, no, he's only one fight away from the title still.
yeah, for sure. And I think the UFC too. I'm hoping the UFC is recognizing what he did there during the pandemic and
Yes.
early in this pandemic and stepped up because he could have just said, "Fuck it, I wanted to fight Khabib. I'm just gonna sit out now."
Yeah.
You're throwing in this crazy ass Justin Gaethje, who's told he's a stand up fighter, and I was training for arguably like you said, the best wrestler, best grappler in UFC history. So he could have just said, "No, I'm good," and he didn't. Stepped up to the plate, and he
Yes.
too. They put on a great show. That's definitely in the top. Whatever 7 fights of the year for sure. That's one that hasn't
Definitely.
been. And even though it was more one sided, but anyways, I'm getting lost in the weeds. I just think the UFC to thank him, keep him up, give him whatever one more fight. He needs one more fight, and he's right back in that mix. Um, so yeah, definitely not Dan Hooker. I don't think Dan Hooker doesn't deserve that fight, man. He doesn't deserve that fight. Um,
Yeah.
for for
And
me,
it does nothing for Ferguson.
I'm looking at the rankings right here. For Dan Hooker, the one I would love to see, and he has mentioned that he would take this fight as well as Charles Oliveira.
Absolutely. Yep. That's what I was going
Five,
to bring up.
5 and 6. That's where the rate. Hooker's at 5, Oliveira's at 6. Perfect fight. Um, Fucking another barn burner. throw him in as a main event again, um, especially for Charles Oliveira. Give him back-to-back 5-round fights. Um, so give him back-to-back 5-round fights, and
Sorry, it's a bug.
that's right.
Yeah.
And see if he's truly ready for that next step. Because after this win, Charles Oliveira needs one more win, and then he's fighting Dustin Poirier. He's fighting Tony
Oh
Gaethje,
yeah,
Tony Ferguson.
he's
Justin.
2 fights away from a title shot.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So I would love to see that. That'd be perfect for him. Other than that,
I
I
totally agree.
I don't see anyone else. I mean, that's really that's the matchup you make. Yeah, that's the matchup you make because I don't think they're gonna throw Diego Ferreira up there
No.
yet. Yeah, they're gonna keep him. They're gonna still kind of give him, you know, whatever, like a number 8. He's number 8. Like, I don't want to get lost in the weeds on this shit.
Yeah, we don't got to go through all the rings, but
We're
yeah,
not-
definitely.
Yeah. So, anyways, Hooker versus Oliveira is the fight I'd like to see.
Definitely. To move on from the main event, unless you wanted to, yeah, we'll move on from the main event. I did want to bring up something, and we'll bring it up at the end. But we had Mike Perry with Lattori, I believe her name was, Gonzalez, in his corner. And, I mean, he looked good. He did well against Mickey Gall. Um, Mickey Gall, not much to say. Honestly, not much to say about that fight. He clearly won. Mickey Gall lost, I should say. Mike Perry clearly won, and yeah, it was a story, but not much other than her saying like "you're doing good, babe" or something. I think is the only
Yeah.
story.
I think the story to come out of that really is just where does Mike Perry go from here? Obviously,
Yes.
he's talented, man, and he would be on he'd be on the short list of fighters that potentially, or he's if his career ends and he doesn't have any super success and jumps up the rankings, whatever, top 5, fighting the top guys, being the top guys, maybe get a title shot. If none of that shit happens, I mean, he's on a short list of fighters that um fighters that what could have been,
Yeah,
um
like a
100.
Donald Cerrone.
I wouldn't put him on that.
He's not on that level, but a what if could have been, or what
No,
could have been.
I think Dallas Cerrone's had success. I'm not. That's what I mean. Like Mike Perry he has all the skills, but he just can't put it together for whatever reason. I'm trying to think of some other fighters that
But
would.
you mean in terms of a title shot? Because that's what I mean. Like Donald Cerrone has never put it together to win a
Yeah,
title.
but like, yeah, no, Dallas Cerrone's successful. The guy's fighting top
Yeah.
guys and he's beating top guys. No, I'm saying Mike Perry in the sense of, I'm talking about a fighter that has all the talent. Like, here's a perfect example. But obviously, jury's still on him. Johnny Walker, Mike Perry, Johnny Walker. Someone that when they came into UFC or when you saw them early in their career, you're like, man, this guy is a beast. This guy
Hmm.
potentially could win a title, but they just never lived up to it. Another person I'm thinking of, even though he fell off really hard, so he would.
Alex Hernandez.
Huh? No, well,
No.
Alex Hernandez potentially could be there too. He's much
Yeah.
old school name. I don't even know if people even remember this dude is Brandon Thatch. Um,
Yes.
like
Yes.
he came in, he was on a crazy run. It looked like this guy's going to be a killer, and then you realize that he can't stop takedowns, and he can't win. Even worse, he can't stop submissions, and he lost like 3 or 4 in a row, and then he's pretty much out of MMA. But just one of these young guys that burst onto the scene, had some
Hmm.
early success. You can see the skills are there, the mental toughness is there, all of that, everything that you would, if you could build a fighter, these guys embody that, but they just, for whatever reason, the mental, the coaching outside the cage, distractions, whatever it was, derailed them. So, yeah, but he's still relatively young, Mike Perry. He's like, I think he's 28 years old.
Hmm.
Um, and I think if he gets into a good camp, he obviously needs a camp that is willing to trust him. That's whatever the start. Um, pardon me. Let me take that back. First and foremost, he needs to trust the camp. That's number one because he seems really skeptical about coaching, and
Yes.
and so he needs to get in with a good camp where where he feels like he's actually being coached the right way, and even beyond that, that the coach actually cares for him and has his back. I think it goes beyond the actual coaching, the X's and O's. Um, I think it comes down to he's got to feel comfortable with this coach and that coach has his back. And so I don't know. That's the biggest thing that came out of this for me. He's looking for a camp, and it'll be interesting if he can get in with a good camp, a good set of coaches that actually have his back and they mesh well. Because this guy, he's super talented. He's fucking super strong. You saw him just dominate Mickey Gall, taking
Hmm.
Mickey Gall down. You're telling me Mike Perry's taking people down? Um, so that was impressive, and the talents there is just man. Can can you get with the coach that will unlock it? And so
Yeah.
yeah,
And
that's that.
will he trust that coach? But I think the true story, at least in my opinion, out of this is honestly the reason I think he didn't go with the corner is because of his issues with money right now. Um,
I can see that.
yeah, I feel like he honestly just kind of went with who like he did this whole angle of I just need my girlfriend and everything. I'm doing my own camp. Honestly, I just think he looked at Mickey Gall, said, I can easily beat this guy. He obviously has all those issues with the IRS. So he was just like, fuck, I'm just not gonna have I'm not going to pay for coaches. I'm just going to go to different gyms and train. Honestly, what I think he did, and he kind of like hinted at this, was he just was people's training partner. So he didn't have to pay for the gym. He just went in there and said, "Hey, I'll be your training partner."
Mm,
So I truly think I don't. He can say whatever, or everyone's kind of taking this angle like, "Oh, he doesn't have any good coaching or whatever." I truly just think he didn't have the money,
mm-hmm,
which is a bigger issue with being a professional athlete not having money. I think in his specific scenario, I think he just wasn't smart with the money he had. But in general, I mean, it's honestly how I feel is that camp should be paid for by the UFC. I mean, if you don't have to pay for your NFL training facility if you go in there, you don't have to pay for your MLB workout facility. And I know they don't have to pay for the Performance Institute, but you should still have the best coaches in the world available to you at the UFC's expense.
I could see that. I'm 50-50. I could see some issues with that. Um,
I can too, because then they would just raise their prices because the UFC's covering it anyways.
yeah,
But
and
yeah,
then the coaches are in the UFC's pocket. Um,
yeah, yeah, and they might just blackball some coaches.
you
Yeah,
never know. Yeah. I don't know. It gets a little messy, but just given the dynamic, the fighting, the dynamic in MMA and fighting, it's tough to have a promotion pay the coach, but whatever. I get what you're saying though. It is
or
kind
give them half. Then
of
just to finish that thought off, give them say we'll cover 50% of all your training costs. So
mhm,
coaches aren't just going to spike up the prices. The UFC isn't necessarily going to the coaches and saying, hey, we're paying for these fighters to train with you. It's kind of like the fighters go choose your camps, give us your bill, and then we'll cover half of that. That way, the coaches aren't incentivized to raise their bill because the fighters still has to cover half of that. But I don't know, just something like I've been saying. I'm not someone who thinks the UFC is obligated to raise any. They're not obligated to do anything in terms of fighter pay, but they are. They, if in terms of what they might want the sport to become, I think there's certain things they should do, like making each fighter salary and stuff like that. So
mhm. Yeah. There's a lot that can be done where the UFC can step up when it comes to the fighters and fighters pay.
hmm
And we've had these conversations in the past, and we're going to continue to have them until something changes. So, but
definitely.
um, I do agree with you when it comes to, or not that I fully agree. I don't know. We both don't know, but I wouldn't put it past Mike Perry to do that, to have Latoria in there where he's not paying her, and to
hmm
see the matchup of it being Mickey Gall and realizing I can do this myself. I don't need to. I don't need to fight. I don't need to pay anyone, and then to be other people's training partners. That's smart. I didn't even think about that. Another thing that was smart and that was interesting that was brought up was what's his face, Thompson, um,
Stephen Thompson.
Thompson, Josh
Oh,
Thompson.
Josh Johnson.
Yeah, on his podcast with Big John McCarthy, he was saying that he was giving Mike Perry advice, and he was saying, "What? Just have someone pay to be in your corner. You know, they give you three,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
have two coaches, and then that third coach, you know, have someone bid to be the third coach in your corner." Never even thought about that. I was like, "Damn, it's pretty smart.
Yeah.
It's a smart idea. A smart suggestion. I mean, yeah, I could see people paying for that, paying 10,000, 20,000 just to be in the corner.
Yeah.
Especially if it's known like, hey man, you're pretty much just gonna be, you know, putting ice on my neck or whatever, handing me a water bottle. You're not gonna be saying anything verbally to me. But yeah, yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. There. I mean, we probably know people personally who'd be willing to pay for that
Hmm.
experience. So yeah, I would. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a super good idea, especially if he doesn't care about who's in his corner per se.
Hmm.
Um,
So
in terms, go ahead. What were you gonna
what
say?
I was gonna say besides that, I mean, I don't feel like there's anything else to really jump into on this card. I mean, Kay Hansen looked good, you know, in her UFC debut. Um, over Virginia Frey. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I did want to go over. I actually had a few things. I'll just shotgun through them, and if you want to
yeah,
add anything, you can add some things. Maurice Green, that was actually a pretty entertaining fight. He almost lost to John Vellante, um, and what a fucking weird ass choke. I've never seen anything like that with someone tapping. It could have been exhaustion. It could have been almost like a suffocation choke. I don't know what happened. No matter how many times they changed the camera angle, I was still a little bit confused as to how he tapped. But maybe Maurice Green has that godly grip. I have no idea. But super strange ending to that one. I was glad that was one of my two, as we'll talk about in the preview show for next card. But that was one of my two picks that I got right, which was absolutely horrible, the worst I've ever done on a card.
yeah,
Um,
that was a crazy submission. I don't know how.
yeah, it was.
I don't know how I don't know what he even put on him to make him tap.
Yeah, they called it a arm triangle from the bottom, which I don't even think is an actual submission.
It'd be interesting to see John Vellante or to hear from John Vellante on
Yeah,
what actually happened there, because I haven't heard
yeah.
anything from him.
And Michael Bisping says he might have tapped out because he has asthma.
Who the hell knows? I'd like to hear from John, but yeah. What else? What else did you see though?
Definitely. Can you still hear me? I think my AirPods just died.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna take them out so they don't die in the middle of me talking.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, if you wanna fill in some.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a nice submission. So like I said, the Kay Hansen looked good. She looked really good, man. I was super impressed by her. Um, who else? Kama Worthy. You know, in that fight, it's just I'll talk more about the loser, Luis Pena. I love the guy a lot, man. I'm not see. Here's another perfect example of what I mean. It's funny that this guy falls on this card too. Mike Perry, Luis Pena. If Luis Pena doesn't end up living up to the hype,
Yes.
you know, this is what I mean. Not as Cerrone. Cerrone is on a different level. That dude's legit. He's established. Has
Yeah.
had success. He's fought for titles, all that type of shit. Um, but yeah, when it comes to Luis Pena, man, he's super talented, man. But he's got wrestling. He's got good submission. And he's got really good striking and diverse striking too. He's an exciting fighter, just can't put it together, you know. And he's a guy that's changed camps multiple times, and yeah, man, I called it. I mean, again, we'll get into it next week when we break down our picks and all that shit. But you know, Kamal Worthy was definitely one of my picks, underdog pick, and
Yeah.
he looked impressive, man. You know, it's crazy that he ended up getting a submission himself. I thought it'd be on
Yeah.
the, but yeah,
Yeah. I don't think people could have predicted how he won that fight, but again, a phenomenal win from Kama Worthy with that weird submission or the guillotine choke. Um, there's a lot of interesting submissions on here, or just submissions in general. I did want to bring up Julian Erosa's Darce choke over Woodson.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I had Woodson, and I definitely thought Woodson would win. I know we shouldn't be talking about all of our bets, but I think I put 3 units on Woodson to win that fight. But I did say there's one path to victory for Julian Erosa, and it's to get Woodson on the ground because Woodson is horrible on the ground. I just didn't think Julian Erosa could get him on the ground, but he proved me wrong. And in that, I think it was the second or third round. Um, it was the third round. He pulled him down to the ground. Woodson's getting up. He locks in that Darce choke. Julian Erosa actually has a very good Darce choke. He has long arms or long limbs in general. And he just dragged him back down, had it locked in, and I was like, wow. And that's the big thing for Sean Woodson. He needs to work on. His ground game is brutally bad. Like his Contender Series fight, 90% of the fight, he was literally just getting manhandled on the ground, fighting off the rear naked choke. So, and he gives up his back as soon as he's taken down as well. So there's a lot that Sean Woodson's phenomenal boxer, pieces people up, and he's good on his feet in general. He's super tall for the weight class, needs to work on that takedown defense, which he's better at takedown defense, but needs to work on his ground because ultimately you're going to get taken down at one point. Especially when you look at that champion, you think you'll ever be able to beat Volkanovski if you can't defend a takedown. I mean, there's no way. So.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. Let's not even talk about that.
Well, I'm just saying, like, when you're in that weight class, you think to yourself, I need to be prepared in these areas, and no matter what, no matter how high up in that division you get, you're gonna fight someone who's very good on the ground. So if he's looking to fight the elite talent, I mean, he's got to be better on the ground. That was my point with that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I did want to Felipe Lins. Man,
like, go ahead. You can go shock on it, like you said, because all these.
Yeah, shotgunning Felipe Lins. Tanner Boser looked great. Felipe Lins got flat lines. I don't know. I think if anything, it just shows the unbelievable difference in the level of talent between PFL and UFC.
Yeah, or just any, outside the UFC, at least right now, I would say not in the past. Strikeforce was legit. Bellator is legit too.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, no, I agree with you. PFL's. Yeah. Anyways, this is
with Askren too. So who knows? But obviously PFL got Rory McDonald. To me, that just makes me think Rory McDonald's literally gonna fucking destroy PFL.
We'll see, man. I don't think he will.
You don't think so?
No, not. I want to see the other fighters in that tournament first.
Yeah.
There are some guys. There are some decent guys in the PFL. I'm not saying that they'll have crazy success in the UFC, but I just feel I don't know about Rory anymore, man. Rory honestly is almost now he ends up getting the title in Bellator, so I can't put him on the level of Mike Perry or anything like that. But I'll just say, on a lesser degree, he is one of those guys that you wonder what could have happened. What he really did. Yeah, because man, I mean, the guy, he looked like the next best. He trained under GSP, Faraz Zahabi as his coach. Was good on all levels of the game: striking, grappling, submissions, toughness. The mental toughness, and for whatever reason, he just never achieved what everyone thought he would achieve, or what a lot of people thought he would achieve.
Yeah.
And then whatever that Robbie Lawler fight, man, took everything out of him. He was a different fighter after that fight. And
he broke.
Yeah, he broke. Yeah.
Oh, and in that last round, he had enough. He took that last shot to the nose, and he was like, "All right."
Yeah, and it's followed him since. And then he says in the Bellator cage, and then people start questioning, "Hey, do you even really want to fight?" And yeah, so whatever. I'm happy for him for getting the money, though. Definitely happy for him getting that money because PFL paid him out. So we'll see. I mean, he should win the welterweight tournament. He really should, but I still want to see who else is in there.
And PFL, just to kind of go back on what I previously said, the PFL does have better lower weight division. So the heavyweight division is literally their worst division. So I guess to not fully throw shade because of how Felipe Lins is doing at the PFL, but either way, I do think it has some sort of validity
Yeah.
as he's a champion and can't even fight an unranked UFC fighter. Um, yeah, I to go back, you brought up Kay Henson twice. Did you have anything specifically to say?
No, I just liked her performance. I mean, she's like a poor man's Ronda Rousey. She's on you grappling. I'm not no. I know. I mean, she has a long way to go. It's her first fight, but just I don't know. I don't know if it's her look. I don't know if it's her. She's kind of got a little swag. I don't know. I was just impressed by her, especially fighting the former champion, Victor champion, and beating her the way she did. So, because I think she lost the first, right? Then she lose the first round, then came back in the second and beat her. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. Yeah. She lost the first and then started really showing her grappling against Jin. She can work on her stand up a little bit, but it wasn't horrible. And that 10th planet jiu-jitsu purple belt really showed itself. I just have one thing I wanted to say about Kay is made me feel like shit. I'm sitting on the couch pigging out with some hot wings, and I'm looking at the tail of tape, and Kay Henson is 20 years old. I'm 20 years old, so I'm sitting on the couch sitting there like, Jesus Christ. I'm sitting over here. I've had 3 jiu-jitsu classes. She's got a purple belt in at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and she's fighting in the fucking UFC. Same age as me. The same thing happened when I watched Chase Hooper. Like, man, I'm finally getting to that age now, and I'm sure you went through this,
Yes.
where everyone who's my age is starting to be in these powerful positions. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I thought I had a good grasp on life.
Yep. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. LeBron James was like the first person that's when it hit me.
Really?
Yeah, when he went to the NBA, I'm like, man, this dude, like, I'm going into college. And this dude's going into the NBA same year.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's weird because you see them have success. Like she's fighting in the UFC. She won a fight. She's fucking 20 years old. It's insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. I always like to look at like DC, and I'm like, oh, he didn't come in until he was like 33, so I got a few years.
Yeah, you got a while, man.
um, other than that, yeah, there's not much to say. Yusuf Zalal looked good against Jordan Griffin. Jordan Griffin had some good grappling, but didn't do much other than grapple. He just wanted to take him down the whole time, and Yusuf was able to fend that off and outstrike him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Takashi Soto, good KO over Jason Witt. Brendan Allen, good fight over Kyle Dawkins. Yeah. So.
So I keep doing this. This is like, yeah. I mean, it was just one of those cards. It wasn't that good of a card, The
really, maybe it was just because I watched the whole thing like round by round, super engaged with it. But I felt like it was a really, really entertaining card. It was one. It was like the Jessica I card. Not a ton of fights that you were like super excited about, but the outcome was very good.
I was just about to say that Jessica I even argue that might have been. It wasn't a better card, obviously, because you have Dustin Poirier and Hooker potentially having the fight of the year at the top. But the undercard was really fun. That Jessica Calvillo card was fun, and this one was fun too. There was some knockouts and shit. And whatever, every fight card, there's always good fights and stuff, and we're gonna watch them obviously. But I was just a little bit disappointed. I felt like there's just no movement. Even the Jessica one.
Yeah.
You had movement. You have fights that actually meant some for divisions. Whereas in this one, there's literally nothing. I mean, it was just the top of the card. And that's it, really. I would say. I mean, I'm trying to think of some other because Mike doesn't matter. I mean, none of the other fights really mattered in the grand scheme of things in the sense of rankings, in divisions, I should say. Kay Hansen was probably, to me, I'm always looking for impressive performances from the females, just given the fact of the depth in their divisions, and hopefully Kay Hansen could be a player at 150 at 115. So anyway, other than that, I mean, is there any other things you want to talk about? I mean, not too much this week. I mean, let me just say, I think you already said this. We are going to get into UFC 251 next week. We're going to dive in deep. I'll really break down these fights. We'll also have our betting preview as well. So we'll pick all the fights and have some bets for you guys. But other than that, I mean, it was a slow weekend in MMA.
I did want to bring up one thing, and I'm trying to think of how to word it exactly. So the thing I want to bring up though is that Paulo Costa Adesanya, Joe Rogan says on his podcast, whether he was supposed to release it or not, I don't know, but he said that they're bringing it back, and those are the two who are doing it. I did want to get your opinion on that, and I also want to throw in a little caveat. I'm not sure if this is true because I looked through Dana White's feed and couldn't find it, but I saw a screenshot that someone posted where Dana White said something like, "Joe Rogan none of this is confirmed yet. Stick to your goofy podcast," or something like that.
Oh, no, man, hell no.
I'm not. Yeah, and that's where I'm like, the way it was worded, I'm like, this is something Dana White would say, but I don't think he would come out at Joe Rogan like that. So again, I have no idea. He might have said it. I don't know. It was just a screenshot that I saw, and it wasn't like by a troll account. So that's why I was like, huh, I don't know.
He didn't say that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, anyway,
it was released on like from a news account, like a Dana White says this. So again, I don't know if that was they had the wrong data from a spoof account or whatever, and Dana White might have definitely deleted it as well if he did post that.
We would have heard about that shit, man. Don't get caught up in that fake news bullshit.
Anyway, I thought I do want to see your opinion on the tough season itself.
You want my opinion?
Yeah, like, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it'll be better with ESPN? Personally, I had an issue with. I thought FS1 is the reason everyone stopped watching Tough. They did it horribly.
Yeah. So first off, Dana had already said that they were going to reboot Tough, so I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
As for Casa and Adesanya, being the headliner, fuck, man. Obviously, that would be great because they have a lot of heat. Adesanya is a great shit talker. Costa gives it back a little bit, but I mean, obviously, I don't think he's not gonna have anything for Adesanya. So, Adesanya is like on Conor McGregor's level in that sense. The trash talking. It's hard for anyone to match their level.
It'll be like Chael Sonnen and Wanderlei Silva.
Maybe, who knows? But Costa's a little bit goofy, younger. You see his account. I don't know if you see his Twitter account. He's pretty funny. He's pretty active on there
But in person is what I mean.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, it's
more of a better juxtaposition because on that season of Tough with Wanderlei Silva and that's where Borrachinha came from. He was on that season of Tough Brazil.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm super happy if they end up doing that. I'm happy that Tough's coming back in the format that I think it will come back in, being on ESPN. If it is on ESPN, it's huge for the UFC. I think right now with the pandemic, you need live shows. You need some content. I think a reality show that some of the UFC doesn't have. You reading some? Okay.
Yeah, I'm listening.
No, it's cool. But the way, the way you look, I don't know what you were reading. You look cockeyed though.
Like this?
No. Your eyes look like they're and shit. You look all cockeyed.
When I focus my right eye, like sometimes my right eye will go like that.
Oh, okay.
Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah, I see it now. Yeah.
So I can focus, and then I make my right eye go to the right.
Yeah, now I see it there. Like, what the fuck is going on?
Which I
But
don't.
but anyways, yeah, I think this would be great for ESPN, great for UFC. Like you said, I agree. I don't think I really just don't think FS1 did enough of the promos. I don't think they promoted it enough, and it just got stale. You know, let's be honest. You know, obviously, I don't know what season I'd end at, but um, it started falling off in the last few seasons, and did that have something to do with it just being stale? It was old. Did it have something to do with the way the FS1 was promoting it? Did it have something to do with the way UFC was promoting it or the way the UFC, the format of it? And I wonder if they do bring Tough back, if they'll change some things and spice it up, especially being on ESPN. But I think it's a great thing with the pandemic going on and you're yearning for live content. Um, you also have that the what the fuck is it called? Reality TV. Reality TV always sells.
Yeah.
I think ESPN can do a good job as long as it's on big ESPN. I think you have a lot of success. If it's on ESPN2 or whatever, ESPN News. Well, it'd be on ESPN2, not ESPN News, but it.
They'll probably just release it on ESPN Plus.
See, I don't want to see that though. That's what I mean. If they have it on big ESPN, I think it can be a successful season.
Definitely.
It's something different that ESPN doesn't have. They don't have a reality TV show that's sports related, and this already has a history. It's not like they're ESPN's concocting, get all these writers in a room and concoct some weird reality TV show based around some sports stars. No, this is legit. This has history, has 20 seasons behind it. Um, so, and the formula's there. The frame is there. The framework's there for them to build off of. So I think, yeah, if ESPN picks this up, throws it on whatever night whatever night, especially now, if they can do it now while the pandemic's still going on, and you're not, because baseball's going to be done soon. You're not going to have your normal baseball season. That's going to end in October. Football. You're going to compete against football. It's probably not even you probably are not going to have to compete against college football. So it's like you're not going to have a lot of sports. NBA is going to be pushed back now. NBA is not going to be starting until December. So they have a window in there where they can knock it out. Because what is it? Is it a 6-week show, right? Don't isn't the show only over 6 weeks or something, or
Yeah,
8 weeks?
it's usually 13 weeks, I believe.
13 weeks.
Yeah.
So 3 months.
Yeah, because fighters will have.
I mean, not so. I'm not saying that in the sense of so. That means I understand what
Yeah,
you know.
fighters will have 4 or 5 fights.
It seems weird that it was three. I thought it was less than that. I thought it was over like a 6 week or 8 week period.
No,
Okay, all right.
yeah. Either way, so and that does change a lot because if it's 3 months, and that's normal. Yeah, the fighters are in the houses for 3 months. Yeah. Um,
Okay.
when that does change a lot because now say they start it July whatever. Um, it will be interesting. Say they started as soon as they get back from Fight Island. They have the 3 months of recording alone, and then they have to edit it. It might not come out till next summer.
Yeah. Oh, I would definitely gotta double check that. It seems way too long. Um,
Yeah, I believe 13 weeks. That's usually.
anyways, but yeah, and then also the other factor that people I don't think are talking about as well when it comes to Tough coming back is what type of you got the UFC. Did LFA have? Are they having fights? I don't believe even UFA's having fights or UFA, LFA. What I'm saying is you don't really have a regional MMA scene right now. Now Dana White's Contender Series is going to come back in August. We already saw that, so that's kind of your regional MMA almost. But I think with Tough, Tough will help fill that void
Yeah,
of that was lost with regional MMA succumbing to this pandemic right now. So I'd love to see it, man. I'm super excited for it. It had a lot of success on Spike, and yeah, once it went to Fox, Fox just didn't market it the right way, didn't put it on the right day. Um, And I feel like ESPN with their brand, they have a lot of smart people in that organization or in that company, and in working with smart people in the UFC, I do think they can put out a great product that the fans are going to want to watch. The MMA fans and the casual fans, and casual fans and just your random sports fans. I think especially because it's reality TV. Um, and if you throw in some crazy guys in there, whatever, like a Mayhem Miller type of fighter in there, to spice it up, man, they'll definitely get some viewers. So
It's a great way to make the stars again in the sport, even with the coaches as well. It's great for Adesanya's career to be a tough coach, and uh,
mhm.
and guys like him and Borrachinha as well. I just looked it up, and it says first couple of seasons were about 3 months long. These days, it's more like 6 weeks. So
Okay.
yeah, 6 weeks is you're correct. It's 6 weeks now, but it used to be 3 months long. So 13 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, so that'd be great. What about you? What do you think about it?
I
I'm
love
assuming.
the idea. I would love to see it back. Like I mentioned earlier, I felt like FS1 did really bad with it. But I agree. A little bit of it was that it was getting stale, and the UFC was looking for. I mean, under FS1, they did the undefeated. Like everyone who came in was undefeated. They did Tough Live, which was horrible. They did. They did Jim versus Jim. That's where Kamaru Usman came in. The Black Zillions versus American Top Team. They just did a lot of different things, and I felt like I kind of mentioned to you this last week before we recorded, but I felt like it was more about promoting the next fight on the card, and it was less about the drama and everything that Spike did with the show itself. You hardly saw the house, and you pretty much like in most of the seasons, besides the Conor McGregor versus Uriah Faber season, you didn't really see much of the fighters outside of training and their own interview. It was almost like they were doing a countdown, and then you saw the fight, and then it was like UFC countdown, and then the fight. And I feel like ESPN would do that better.
Agreed. And here's another thing when you're talking about, um, the seasons, it was getting stale or whatever. Part of the reason why it was getting stale is because all these fighters, UFC wasn't able to pull top regional talent. Um, so you didn't even see anyone. Like I remember the Uriah Hall. That was like for me one of the last ones I remember watching or even paying attention to because
Yeah,
you saw that guy with spectacular knockouts. You're like, man, he could be something. But most of the seasons, past few seasons, um, were just trash. I mean, they didn't have any really good fighters coming out of the show. Whereas before, that's where the UFC was getting a lot of their fighters,
yeah,
a lot of their talent. And now you're seeing that kind of trickle over into Contender Series. Now UFC or Dana White's Contender Series is. I mean, they're pulling some stars out. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of 50-50, I believe. I'd have to look it up, but recently it was about 50-50 when it comes to those fighters coming out of Contender Series, the success that they're having, that you're seeing, that they're seeing, I should say, is about 50-50 right now. But man, you're seeing some killers come out of the Contender Series. Sean O'Malley being one of them. That kid looks like a star, or fucking to me, he is a star. Um, but yeah, I just think talent got stale, and I feel like right now, like I said, without regional MMA going on, the UFC if they end up doing this season, you're going to see a lot of these fighters, some beast fighters from the regional scene come on that show and try to get that 6-figure contract or whatever they're going to end up giving these guys as the prize. But and same thing with Contender Series. To just piggyback real quick, I know I'm hijacking this conversation, but even the Contender Series, I'm looking forward to because man, there isn't any other MMA out there. These organizations aren't doing anything, so naturally, what are the fighters doing? They're sitting around,
yeah.
looking for a fight. No pun intended. When it comes to Dana White or whatever,
Anyway,
looking for a fight.
yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I'm interested to see what see those fights too. See the Dana White Contender Series fights as well because I think he's gonna have some really good talent on those.
Yeah, I agree. And just because we mentioned this, you can see Forrest Griffin title. These are just the winners. Almost every single one. If they didn't win a title, they at least got a title shot. So you had Forrest Griffin, Diego Sanchez, Rashad Evans, Joe Daddy Stevenson, Michael Bisping, Kendall Grove. That's the first one that wasn't super successful, I don't think.
Kendall. Yeah.
Matt Serra, Travis Luter, who I meant to bring up earlier when we were talking about guys who never reached their full potential. Travis Luter was a fucking beast, but he was just a victim. He was another victim on Anderson Silva's list of guys that he took out. So he really kind of wasn't able to do anything after that. Nate Diaz, Mac Danzig didn't do much. Amir Zadala, Efrain Escudero. Yeah, then you start. But then Ryan Bader picked it up. Ross Pearson, James Wilkes, Roy Nelson, Court McGee, Jonathan Brookins, Tony Ferguson, John Dodson, who beat TJ Dillashaw, Diego Brandao, Michael Chiesa. I feel like I'm committed now. I have to finish these. Colton Smith, Calvin Gaslam, he beat Uriah Hall, Juliana Pena, Chris Holdsworth, Eddie Gordon. See, these are all on FS1 at this point. Corey Anderson.
Michael Bisping.
What'd you say?
Michael Bisping.
Yeah, I already mentioned him at the beginning.
Rashad Evans. Yeah, there's a lot, man. There's a lot, and that's what was great about Tough at one point, because legitimately you're watching that showing like one of these, not even one of these guys. Obviously, the winner you expect to end up being a star, but even some of the other guys, the loser in the main event, whatever it is. But you felt like I felt like I would just say, 4 fighters out of that season were going to be legit stars.
Yes.
Yes. In the UFC, and now the last few seasons, it's just like, what? You don't even hear about these people anymore.
Yeah, I will say though, I think a lot of that too is just the extra, or I guess the deeper talent that the UFC has, where these guys just have a little bit harder of a road. Whereas before it was pretty top heavy in every division in the UFC, so these guys would win tough, fight a top 5 or fight a top 10, then a top 5, and then be at the title. Whereas now you win tough and you're not ranked in the top 15. You still have to fight your way up to that. And I think we're going to see them. They're just taking longer. Like Tatiana Suarez won 2 seasons ago. Tim Elliott won the last season of Tough. And Ryan Hall won the season before that. So just in general, I think a lot of these guys you'll see raise up. It's just going to take them longer than what we were used to seeing in the early Tough days. But I agree with you. I think that is something that hurts them, is that they're not shot up right to these to the title fights now because of how deep the UFC is, and it ultimately brings attention away from the tough seasons.
What else you got? Because I am getting tired, man.
Yeah, I think that's it. It will be interesting. I wonder what weight class this tough season will be if they do have it. Because obviously the coaches will be middleweights, but they're most likely not going to coach middleweights. So, yeah.
They normally don't do that. Yeah, I have no idea. Maybe, yeah. Whatever weight class needs talent. I mean, that's what I would say.
Heavyweight or light heavyweight, it should be.
I'd say light. I don't want to see the heavyweights, man. It's hard to find legit heavyweights and good legit heavyweights at that. So light heavyweight would be good. Middleweight would be good too.
Yeah.
That's not a deep division either, middleweight. Something like that. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's all. Do you have anything else that came up this week that you wanted to discuss?
Just trying to think if I have anything in my notes.
I do want to say, so I think it was episode 7 or episode 6. It's been bugging me ever since. I was talking about the straw weights, and I kept mentioning Valentina Shevchenko, and it's literally eating at me. Obviously, she's not the champion of that. But, like, I had this brain fart where we were talking about it was the Carlos Esparza. We were talking about how she had fought the top people. She can't beat the top 5. And I kept mentioning Valentina Shevchenko as though she was the champion, but obviously Zhang Weili is the champion. So I just want to throw that out there to fix that.
Okay. Yeah, nothing. Yeah, nothing else on my end. I mean, obviously, they're doing some award. They're voting on mid-season awards or not mid-season.
You still there?
I'm done, to be honest with you. Um,
Yeah, you cut out for a lot of that, but
okay, good. Hey, I'm glad I did cut out because I'm saying what I was talking about. Just I was about to go, yeah, go and get into the weeds. I'm done. I got nothing else to say.
definitely.
Yeah, again, I'll just quickly say we're gonna have the plan is um, next Wednesday. I would say, yeah, Tuesday or Wednesday we're gonna have a betting. We're gonna have a betting preview. The odds would be better if we did them on Friday, but we're gonna be going out to Vegas on Friday, so we're not gonna be able to do it. So our plan is to either do a Wednesday or maybe Thursday night. Get a podcast out to you with the betting and our predictions, and then we also would like to do a full breakdown of how do you want to do it. I mean, we're gonna have two. I feel like we need to have two. We need that one and then our regular like recap, but there's no fights to recap. So I feel like we should just do a deep dive into UFC 251 and you know and the things that surround that card. But
Yeah,
separately we'll have a picks pod. But go ahead.
yeah. If you want to do that, we're almost brainstorming live on the show. We can do a. I would love to do a breakdown, and we can even literally um, do it anytime. I mean, we can do it in Vegas, whatever you want to do before the fight on Saturday. We'll definitely do the betting preview in that. That's the main thing for sure. We'll get that out to you. Whether we do a second show with the breakdown or not will depend on our timeline. But I definitely think I would love to do a break, almost like a what is it, the dissected that Luke Thomas says. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to do something like that where Gene and I kind of film study and truly come to you guys knowledgeable and breaking down each fight. And for those of you who want to listen to a more long form, what do you truly think about these fights? Because that will be a longer podcast, but we'll probably just release that as a bonus episode
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
something
So
like that.
maybe, yeah. We'll figure it out. We'll do some. We shouldn't be doing the brainstorming on here, but we'll definitely get a a betting podcast and picks podcast out Wednesday or Thursday. That's a plan. And then we're flying out to Vegas. We'll be out in Vegas for a few days, and we will be watching UFC 251. Unfortunately, like I said at the top of the show, unfortunately, it's not going to be live in person as we anticipated earlier in the year, but we'll still be on the ground in Vegas. Hey, maybe we'll see some of you guys out there. Maybe we'll watch the fights with you. Whatever, we'll hit us up on Twitter if you're going to be in Vegas
Definitely.
for the fights. But we'll definitely be out there watching it, and then we'll have a reaction podcast right after that, live from Vegas. And yeah, man, just keep this ball rolling.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I guess we'll just close this off then. Um, Thank you to Tyrell Brown for our artwork. You can see it behind me. Um, that
Sam too.
yeah, merchandise coming soon.
Yeah.
Gene MMA show. So thank you to Tyrell Brown. Phenomenal artwork. We love what he did. You can follow more of his artwork at Cloud City Cartel on Instagram. Our music, we love our music as well. That's from Alex Weishar. You can follow him at Alohi on SoundCloud. And thank you to our sponsors, the Fringe Faction. Give them subscribe, a like and subscribe on YouTube. You can go to our YouTube, by the way, that if you guys are watching this video and not just listening to the podcast audio, you can go there, and that is just the BP Mean Gene MMA show on YouTube. We'll post the link in the bio for that. And thank you to Anchor.fm for being the platform that we do this podcast on. I guess we got to throw a shout out to Zoom as well, because that's our new video outlet for this. Other than that, Follow us on Twitter. All of those things will be in the bio. I've tried to be more active on Twitter. I know Meet Gene's trying to be as well.
Yep.
Other than that, I think we're done.
Yep. All right, guys. We'll see you. Talk to you. Peace.
Peace.